I'm still, although from a slightly different perspective, thinking about this call for a citizen army. Because it hasn't gone away, as I knew it wouldn't, ever since General Patrick Sanders, who's stepping away from his role at the head of the armed forces, head of the army, who's suggested that a general call-up or a standing up of the people of the country to contemplate war with Russia. I've heard Boris Johnson entering the fray, and as would have been expected, because it's all part of a choreographed bid to upset people, the media have latched on to it and have been out and about asking people in the street whether they think whatever conscription, call up, citizen army is a good idea. So you can see it's out there, it's zeitgeisty. This is by no means only a predicament for Britain and the British. This fear porn, which is increasingly focused around the need for war, is everywhere. You know, Americans in particular are living in that shadow. But it's all across the West. The previously civilized world of the West, you know, the world that I was raised to believe was about diplomacy and democracy and about world peace and all of the rest of it, is being beaten over the head with the threat of war. And the younger generation coming through are in the process of being conditioned to believe that forever war is going to be their reality. War without end. Part of the choreographed fear being stoked around the idea of imminent threat. At the moment, it's imminent threat from Russia. It's been an imminent threat from disease, imminent threat from climate. It takes its power from the notion that we're running out of everything. You know, there's a background noise of shortage, that we're running out of time to save the world, that we're running out of energy unless we spend billions and trillions on so-called renewables. We're running short. There's a kind of and they're stoking anxiety in this way. And when it comes to the talk of a call-up for UK citizens, you know, to listen to the sound of the drums and prepare to march away to fight some or other foe, in that instance, the necessity comes from there not being enough professional soldiers. You know, that's the mood music. You know, General Sanders said, and I quote, "Ukraine brutally illustrates that regular armies start wars, citizen armies win them." Now, I'm no soldier, but that sounds like nonsense to me. Nonsense. And it's, amongst much else, it's anachronous as well as deliberately frightening. But before we get to those considerations, notice what has actually happened in Ukraine, what's still happening in Ukraine, which is to say the citizen army, if that's what you call something comprising, you know, the middle-aged and the increasingly elderly and pregnant women and others hardly suited to frontline fighting, that citizen army, so-called, has been devastated until, as far as we can tell, and I've been quoting this figure for weeks and months, so it'll be a bigger number by now, but there are 500,000 dead Ukrainians now. And that's professional soldiers and hundreds of thousands of members of the general public, you know, hastily herded into the front line, pulled off the street and sent into the front line. That citizen army in Ukraine is not winning anything. Quite the contrary. That citizen army is being culled like so many captive beasts. And I think about this a lot. I think about how we're just over a century beyond the general call-up of 1915 in the UK that created a citizen army, another citizen army, inspired by the Secretary of State for War, Kitchener. And it led to the PALS battalions, amongst much else, those shameful tragedies whereby whole streets, whole factories, offices, whole clubs, whole communities saw their men and boys march off together, literally arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder. And then those communities and factories and whatever else received, all at the same time, the telegrams saying that they'd all died together in their thousands in the same dread moments on the Somme in 1916. The carnage was wholesale. And decisions were taken then and there, over 100 years ago, to ensure that those who knew each other and or were related by blood, members of the same family, brothers, fathers and sons, should never be assembled in one place again. That they would never again risk putting all these people in the same place so that when they were killed, they tore irreparable holes in the fabric of the worlds that they had marched away from. And that realisation, those actions taken then, that was when industrialised warfare was new, a largely unknown, untested phenomenon, really on that scale. At least the commanders and the planners then, in 1916, they had the excuse that since they had not seen battles fought with machine guns and heavy artillery, they could not imagine the reality of it, the toll of it. But here we are now in a 21st century of drones and ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons 1,000 times more powerful than those that were dropped on Japan a lifetime ago, with military types suggesting with a straight face that war with Russia might best be fought by civilians turned soldiers overnight. I would say it beggars belief, which is why I can't bring myself to believe it'll ever happen. Not quite. But already the media, the traditional mainstream media, are in position and on message. They're cheerfully out there supporting the suggestion, you tub thumping and sabre rattling that Russia or God knows Iran, China, whatever, is poised to threaten us directly, and that the thousands and then the tens of thousands might ready themselves. Well, to do what exactly? Let's imagine that it happens, and let's imagine that a citizen army forms up. Well, it doesn't take great insight or foresight to notice that long before their trains could deliver such a citizen army to a front, the ballistic missiles or the drones or weapons, nuclear or not, would transform those citizens into vapour that blows away on the wind. They'd never come to blows. So it's hard to know for certain what's going on here. Is the establishment really imagining that where Ukraine has led, that corrupt entity, that anti-democratic laundry for dirty money, that where Ukraine has led we might follow? Mass graves in the forests, the dead out of sight and out of mind. Does anyone this side of the front door of the madhouse really think our sons and daughters might face the prospect of standing to with helmets on and rifles on their shoulders? Surely it's just nonsense. Surely it's just the latest fear porn. And in some respects, as fear porn, it's already done its job. You're rattling every parent. Scott Trudy rattled. We talk about it. Do you think it'll happen? She asks. I don't think so, I say. But it has raised ghosts of heartbreaks past from the collective memory. But having said all that, being rational, a person can never be sure in this present climate, because we know the ranks of the establishment are filled, at least in part, by sociopaths, even psychopaths, who are drunk on the power they've awarded themselves. And in order to keep feeding the high, they're looking for more and more outrageous and egregious ways to further an agenda that's fundamentally anti-human, that holds all human life in contempt. But they can't help themselves. They're drunk on power. They're sociopathic. And the thrill of it, even if they do contemplate the consequences, the thrill of doing it, making people frightened, exercising that power, is irresistible to them. So they keep doing it. You've got to remember that they don't like us. It's really important to see that. They may even hate us. Are we really going to watch our children or anybody else that we care about march away to fight and die for those who despise them? The enemy is not Russia. The enemy is not Iran. The enemy is not China. And those are nation states. So it's certainly not, the enemy is not the Russian people or the Iranian people or the Chinese people, because the mass of those populations are just people like you and me who are determined only to see their children grow up to live decent and hopefully long, healthy lives, unperturbed by machinations of madness. The enemy is those in government. I said at the top that the latest suggestion that citizen soldiers must stand ready to replace professional soldiers revealed an important consideration. Also missing, absent without leave, in some sinister way, are the professional journalists. And they've been gone a long time. Instead of honest, trained, professional men and women investigating and searching for truth, journalists, in the true sense of the word, driven by something inside them to inform the people about what's really going on, to challenge authority, to ask awkward questions, to risk being unpopular in the face of authority figures, to find out what's really going on behind our backs. Instead of that, we have a legion of lackeys, establishment toadies, bought and paid for and doing nothing more or less than pushing state propaganda. Back in 2021, which feels like another world now, I spoke to a gathering assembled by the Legatum Institute. It's kind of a think tank. And in a light-hearted tone, I quoted man of letters Humbert Wolff and his short poem, The British Journalist, which goes, "You cannot hope to bribe or twist, thank God, the British journalist, but seeing what that man will do unbribed, there's no occasion to." Ha ha. Those words have come back to haunt me now as I contemplate the reality that professional journalism in this country is a dead parrot. It has ceased to be. Joined the choir invisible, as Monty Python had it. But in its place has risen, thank God, a veritable army of citizen journalists. Untrained for the job they may be. Maybe you don't even want the job. But realising the absence of anyone else prepared to look for and then tell the truth, unwilling or not, they've stepped up and risked all to do what needs to be done, which is to tell the truth. And all over the internet, though their output is defamed as misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Do you know what malinformation is? Malinformation is information that the authorities acknowledge is true, but doesn't help them push their case. So it's inconvenient truth. That's what malinformation is. Yeah, that's true, but we don't want anyone knowing that. But they still prosecute for malinformation. But citizen journalists, an army of same, is out there telling the truth in the face of an enemy army, better equipped perhaps, but lacking any soul, any human soul. That enemy is trying and failing to defeat the army of citizen journalists, to cow them into silence. And that's just the profession of journalism. One among many. Throughout our dangerously eroded civilization, it's the same, where those tasked with work of vital importance are failing to deliver. You walked away, they're just absent, they're not there. Or what they're doing is a corruption and an inversion of what they were traditionally supposed to do. So that what we will need in the future are citizen armies, right enough, though not the sort being suggested in the media right now in relation to forever war with Russia. In the face of corrupted and ruined institutions, medicine, politics, the law, education, you name it, citizen armies will be required to step up and take the places of all those that have let us down. We need alternatives for all of it. New schools, new universities, new administrations, new assemblies. It sounds daunting, sounds impossible even, but it's not. And for the sake of the future of civilization in the West, it can't be impossible. It must be possible. All the other side has now, when you get right down to it, is fear. Hard though it may be to remember after 4 years like no others, we didn't always live in a perpetual state of anxiety about disease and about the climate and about the collapse of our traditional communities. We didn't lie awake at night wondering if our children were to be marched off to be consumed by some Orwellian forever war that's about nothing except perpetuating itself. War to make more war. War to make more money. It's no accident. In fact, it's deliberate on the part of those in power. Those who, with the pandemic, finally went too far, too fast, and revealed themselves for what they are. But we can see them now. Some of us have been watching them for a while, and they're not to be feared any longer. Here's the thing. They're nothing more than ridiculous. Why is anyone still taking our leaders and their would-be replacements seriously? Why are media channels, I ask myself, still interviewing these clowns? Clown's one of the nicer words you could use. The answer is, well, much of the media is interviewing these clowns because they're complicit in it. And you might as well interview characters from a soap opera. You might as well get the landlord of the Queen Vic in EastEnders to make decisions about the economy or defence. We are watching, indeed we are allowing ourselves to be subject to a farce. Who will we be goaded into hating and fighting next? The list has already been endless. If you have any hate left over, direct it where it belongs and where it might actually achieve some benefit. Direct it towards those who have set about and all but completed the dismantling of our ways of life. It's time for a citizen army, right enough. But the enemy is not abroad. It's here at home. And we need rid of the whole ugly lot of them.